Anders, do you know that Dad's making a film about Barry Flanagan?
Yeah.
It's got hares in it. Have you seen any?
Yeah, I've seen.
Do you like them? What do you think of them?
Well, they look like they're plastic.
Do they? Well, they're not.
So do you like those pictures of those hares?
Yeah.
They're sculptures, aren't they? What do you think of them? Do they make you think of rabbits or hares?
They're funny.
Have you seen a real one?
No.
And what do you think when you look at the sculptures?
I think they're really big. Really big and really tall. Really fat and really no. Okay, I'm finished.
Do you think, Anders, when you look at the hare pictures?
It looks like the hare trying to break into shops.
What is it you think that you like the most?
I think I like them because some of them are scattered around different places and on different objects and things, and they're quite unusual but really nice and well done. Do you think I've ever seen a hare? Maybe I have, I just don't know.
Well, it is fantastic, isn't it? I mean, even from a distance, it's just extraordinary, isn't it? That's amazing as well. It's elephants. This hare out, dynamic, on top of 3, 4 elephants, which have to be the heaviest creatures, you know, that walk the earth, and yet they're kind of dwarfed, supporting this extraordinary hare. Whereas this has all this kind of amazing length and height. Black. And then there he is, flying out. There's something that's completely joyous, really. There's an abandon. There's a kind of a madness. It's like a risky enterprise. In a way, they kind of exist and stand and can carry on much more happily without us cluttering up their feet. Their dance continues. Now we've gone away. They become more strong, mightier, really.
It is like part of a machine. And you think of that thing in Felix Randall, the farrier, the Hopkins poem about how this great, strong man who forges things out of metal, the blacksmith, dies. And he ends with this extraordinary line where he says, of his death, he says, "How far from then forethought of thy more boisterous years." This marvellous line when he says, "Thou, the grim random forge, didst fettle for the great grey dray horse his bright and battering sandal." He brings tears to the eyes, and they're tears of absolute delight, of finding, God, it always sounds pretentious, but what he's doing is he's finding the living thing within the living creature, the living thing within that creature that's not living. It's a sort of I keep coming at this idea of the glorious machine, the machine that's come to some consciousness that can be aware of itself. The hares are doing it in one way with their gymnastics. He's doing it in another way with his, he's just caught in a turn. He's horse reduced to his absolute hoarseness. He's got an agenda we just simply don't know about. He's not there to amuse us or to be beautiful. And look, even how his mane is both simultaneously almost like an Aztec crest, and it's like the teeth of some great industrial gear wheel. This horse's eyes know more than any horse is capable of. They're surveillance eyes, they're computer age eyes, and these diabolical ears almost seem to be horns, and then this sort of almost unicorn crest. It's like a flambeau, isn't it? Like a flames on his head. He's much more. People think he's a sort of rather pedestrian, simple, straightforward horse with none of the fantastical imaginings of the hares, the bunnies, they're even calls them. But there's an awful lot more to this horse. Catch him absolutely straight on. Put him straight on with that crest there, with the sun on him. He's ablaze. And he's ablaze with some sort of odd. You don't want to, those eyes are, I don't know, he's very moving, but he's not moving in the sense of, oh, what a beautiful horse, or, oh, what a beautiful representation of a horse. He's saying something about our relationship, and I think it's probably true of all Barry Flanagan stuff. He's saying something about our relationship with animals, and he's also saying something about how really, really, really badly wrong we get our relationship with animals. This horse is a corrective.
We both used to work night shifts at Parker's Bakery in Cottam in Bristol. And I used to load up the machines with the empty baking tins. And Barry used to put the jam in the donuts. It amused me to think that putting the jam into the donuts was almost a sculptural act in very much the same way as like changing the shape of a piece of clay or adding something to a piece of clay or a piece of stone in some of his later work. That projection of the human into the natural world, so to speak, through animals is something that goes back a very long way in both art and poetry. Barry has more than a touch of the shaman about him. The way he can take something out of the world of the everyday and transmute it. He has this way of making a relationship between his body, his hand, and the materials. And it's almost as if in some circumstances he lets the materials lead his hand. He refers somewhere, doesn't he, to the work showing his hand. I love that idea that the work shows your hand rather than you're imposing something on the work and you are in some kind of relationship. When we had lunch together recently, he still had that eye, that curiously magical way of picking up everything that's going on around him and seizing on the detail of the everyday particulars.
We have it's the largest community college in the area.
And how many students are there here?
Over 37,000, and that includes credit and non-credit, so a lot of people see it. Thousands of people every week. It's become sort of an icon for the college and a landmark too. It's located right next to the library. We'll often see students after class, in between class, resting here outside by the sculpture.
And if this piece has an effect on you, what is the reaction you get from it?
I think the word whimsical comes to mind. Just the fact that people respond to it right away. They enjoy it, they find it fun. There are many different layers to it, so that's always good to kind of start off with a general good feeling.
You don't get any hairs here.
Right, they're different than what we have. We have the cottontail, called the eastern cottontail rabbit,
Yeah.
and I think they're smaller.
Yeah.
And they're everywhere. You heard the term multiply like rabbits, which is so they're all over here in Iowa.
And do a lot of the wilder animals feed on them?
Yes, coyotes, hawks, maybe eagles, maybe owls, most of your bigger predators.
There's a light rail platform down there, and during the winter, or it could, probably during the summer, they have concerts here, but there'll be hundreds, thousands of people coming by here. Probably just glance over and look at the hair without ever seeing who did it, or but here it stands for their perusal.
I spoke to one of the guys doing the flowers earlier, and he knew there was another Barry Flanagan piece outside the National Gallery of Art in Washington, D.C.
Did he?
He was too shy to talk on camera, which I thought was a great shame.
Well, he's working for the city, and the city probably, has he fears that if I do that, I might lose my job or something like that. People are, they don't want to say anything on camera. A lot of unemployment, and people. They might talk to you in person, but once you put a camera up, so many bad things happen when people speak on camera. So people are quiet a bit, and it makes them a bit, how shall I say, paranoid. But not the hair. Hair's not paranoid.
It's interesting that we're hearing a bell ring in the background.
Yes.
When in fact we have a bell.
Indeed, that's wonderful. I like to read the piece almost like a sentence, starting at the basis where we have these gorgeous limestone cubes that serve as a pedestal for the most incredible monumental bell that resounds in history and culture. So the bell is sort of sitting on top of the history of architectural form, the building blocks of architecture. And then on the very top, we have the ultimate in free-spirited animal form, the hare leaping across the bell. It's just a profound, profound piece. It's almost a sentence reading about the universe or humanism and bringing all of that together.
It's a very different reaction that one hears about Barry in America than, let's say, I've ever heard in Europe. Completely different. And it could be like you've just been in the Midwest. It could be people in Midtown, or it could be people in Washington, D.C. They know, in America, Flanagan quite different than the one that we know in England. They're almost totally unawares of his early work. They're very, very unawares of where he's actually coming from or has been himself. So it's curious how they perceive him here.
There is something charitable, it would appear, about his whole approach to life, let alone...
Yeah, I totally agree.
Is it at all possible that he is due some kind of serious review and celebration?
Yeah, I think absolutely. I've never known anybody else quite like him, I have to say. He doesn't give much away these days. So a lot of, even the people that work at the gallery feel they have no idea where he's coming or going. They're totally confused by him. I find it hilarious, as does he.
just like to say this is a real pleasure to see all these pieces, all these hairs scattered across the American landscape, and that the journey continues. So Barry left you a note here the other day, and he has presented you with this piece, which you said reminded you of your grandmother.
My grandmother, like in England also, at the back of the garden, she used to have a beehive, and in terms of extreme emotional stress, she'd go and talk to the bees. This I just put there this morning.
And Robin, have you known Barry on this island over the years?
Yeah, long time. I've rubbed rabbits with him. Do people ever throw money in here?
Yes.
Yeah, for the upkeep, for the gardener's cigarettes.
Is there any way, do you think, your community was one of the reasons Barry felt comfortable when he came here, or was it a very separate kind of universe?
No, there's the enlightened and there's the other lot, aren't there?
Barry will love this. I have buried many dead birds here in the garden.
What would you say was the initial, the beginning of the reason Barry felt comfortable here?
I guess it was mind over matter. He always had that sort of sense of being incognito. He reminds me of everybody's talking at me. I can't hear a word they're saying. Fast-moving car. Most of my profound thoughts, they have gone up in smoke, literally. Yeah. Well, it's fun to finally... No laughter on the premises, please. Life is a serious business.
Okay. You published with them, right? Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna note it down now. Also, on the point of attitudes, Teresa came across a load of photos recently, which she's going to scan for me. They're not very well reproduced. They're just on photocopied paper. But she's going to scan them for me because I can't identify all the stuff, and it would be very helpful. She doesn't know, and if I could send them to you, if you know some of the things, that would be brilliant. It's from the Bern showing.
He said this in spite of having handled thousands of hares himself and of being familiar with them over a period of 40 years as a keeper, an occupation which his family had followed for at least 3 generations before him.
So do you like the Barry Flanagan sculptures of hares?
Yes, I do a lot.
I'm looking forward to showing Barry the work, you know, the images of what people are saying about his work.
What other things has he done?
Well, he did lots of more abstract sculpture. He did lots of work on paper. He did work with material. He did lino cuts. He worked with stone.
One of them just walked by saying, do you think that hare's thinking about Easter? In any case, there's always things that people want to talk about in front of the work.
Why is it we like him so much, do you think?
Well, he has a wonderful humorous quality to him. He has a very sort of compassionate quality. He's listening to us. He wants to know what we're doing, what we're thinking. But his forms are so delightful. They're sort of ropey. They're kind of floppy. His ears are fantastic. They stick up out there. His eyes seem to really jump out of his head. But I think most of all, it's sort of the idea being that somebody that is a hare could have such a kind of human quality to him.
So do you have anything you'd like to say to Barry?
Well, one of it is, you know, people often ask what the most favorite piece of work here was when the garden was dedicated about 7 years ago, and Hillary Clinton was First Lady at that particular time. And the newspaper quoted her as saying that The Thinker on the Rock was her very, very favorite piece. I hope Barry likes that.
He's always playing with the language of, you know, language of sculpture as he did with these strange, very simple, beautiful early ones. And likewise, when he moved into this more figurative production, you're never quite sure what his angle is and whether it is a sort of tongue-in-cheek, a wink. I think of him as winking. One evening, I was living on Bleecker Street, and I needed to post a letter. I was going to post a letter to London. It must have been about 1:30 in the morning. And we had a post box on the corner, and I went out to post my letter. And there, in the middle of the night, Barry Flanagan. And he was there, moving back and forth. Said, yes, of course. He said, well, would you like a drink? Do you want to have a drink? And I said, well, yeah, that'd be fantastic. I mean, I only popped out. I actually had my pajamas on under my trousers. I can remember this. I sort of put a jacket on over my pajamas.
And this is just tremendous. You know, I love the shape of it, and it makes me happy, and it cheers me up whenever I come through, just to see it. And you can see the kind of, the genuine eccentricity of this character, as opposed to so many artists who, you know, put on a show of being unusual characters. He's a really unusual character. But not just single-line gimmicks. They're very sophisticated works of sculpture. I mean, you know, a proper art historian could talk about Rodin and the Balzac sculpture and could, you know, discuss this work in terms of that whole French late 19th century lineage. I'm just checking my bicycle is still there. And look at it from here. Look at it from here. You know, against this building, against these monstrous buildings, you have this fantastic life and humor and wit. You know, it's witty.
Is it very popular?
Well, I think so, yes. It's the very last point before Holland.
There, there's a rabbit. Hein? La statue du lièvre, bien sûr. Monsieur, il fait un film de la statue du lièvre. Tu vois? Monsieur a demandé qu'on fasse.
Do you enjoy seeing this work here?
Yes, it's very nice. It fits really into the landscape, and it shows a really strong impression of nature. And it really looks like it can move every second. It can be gone in a second if you see it like this.
Have you seen this before?
Yes, yes. I mean, almost every holiday when we're here, we come and see the hare.
It's popular with the children and the adults.
Yes, yes.
And if you had a message to give Barry Flanagan, what would you like to say to him?
I would like to thank him for making this piece of art. It's really giving us a nice impression of nature, and it's really a beautiful thing that he made. There used to be bunkers here. It used to be a defense line with guns and pointed in that direction to avoid an invasion. But now it is totally different. It's very nice.
We told him that we were making a film. We'd just come back from doing a student exchange in France, where we went to Dijon and Marseille. And while we were away, we'd made a film called Oh la la, les légumes. And Barry said to us, when that film's ready, make sure you show it to me. On the day of the screening, lots of people came, but there was no sight of Barry. And then after the films had finished,
In walked Barry?
In walked Barry. And we said, oh, Barry, we've just shown the films. And he said, oh, can you show it again? Do you mind showing it again? So we said, no, of course not, we'll put it on again. So we screened the film, and
just for Barry?
People left, and the three of us kind of sat there in the dark, watched the film. And then afterwards, Barry came up to us and he said, I want to buy that. And we'd never sold anything in our life. It was actually only the second piece of work that we'd made together. And so it was very encouraging to us, and also it kind of confirmed our collaboration in our own minds as well, that, you know, that something that we'd made together was actually interesting to somebody else, enough for them to want to buy it. I remember another time we went to the opening of Falls to Shadow, the exhibition curated by Barry Barker at the Hayward Gallery. And everybody was standing around sort of drinking champagne, having polite and enthusiastic conversation. And suddenly in comes Barry in a big old overcoat, pushing a baby's pram in front of him, which was full of bundles of clothes.
He looked like a tramp. It was very eccentric, and he just sort of shuffled in, not acknowledging anyone.
Yes, he wouldn't speak to anybody.
He wouldn't speak to anyone, and just sort of pushed this trolley along. And it was such a weird and
the whole
wonderful
exhibition,
way.
pushing this pram.
Yeah.
It was very eccentric.
I think everybody here knows that Barry can't be with us on doctor's orders. And of course it takes a bit of the joy out of the proceedings, but he is so determined that this should be the celebration that he'd planned.
Yes, I remember Barry when he first came to St. Martin's. He didn't join the class to get some diploma or anything. He just wanted to be there. I think he'd heard it was an exciting place to be. And from the word go, you know, he was really a refreshing and important presence there at the time. Caro had just made a breakthrough, and Barry was aware of various tendency in that world. But his first work was a steel work, but it had many surprises, which kind of flummoxed everybody and said, why are you doing this and why are you doing that? And we had a good argument as to whether it could really. It didn't fit into the canons that had already been operating around. He was a maverick. And I think he's carried on being a maverick for the rest of his life, really. Skill was not something you demonstrated, you avoided it. And Barry took it on and said, you know, I'm going to be skillful. And he was. And I think he sort of confronted skill and went beyond it.
It shows the artist thinking and suffering and thinking again on top of the anvil of struggling with people and galleries and creativity. And then on top of it, we have the wonder of this piece. I own a sculpture of myself done in terracotta, which has Barry's finger marks on it. He didn't sign it. He signed it with his hands because he's a haptic sculptor, I think. So it's his It's his fingers. It's his fingers on the pieces. Look, there's his fingers. That's Barry's fingers.
And what major lessons do you think Barry Flanagan gives artists starting out today?
I think it's go for it, even when people are laughing at you and paying no attention whatsoever to what you have to say, which I do remember very well when Barry was young, and he didn't talk a lot, but what he talked about, people paid no attention to whatsoever, except stupid me and one or two other people, and he was right. He had got it inside him, but he didn't realize that.
to me, is just so delicate, and it's so human, and it's so full of a sense of humour, and it's just wonderfully unusual, but yet simple. Dubliners really do know his work. I mean, especially with the pieces that were on O'Connell Street a few years ago. This was the very first piece of art that I saw when I came to Dublin. You could imagine a whole scene of these magnificent 12-foot-high hares all in some wonderful pagan dance that human beings would never see. You can see finger marks, you can see where it's been fashioned by hand, but when you actually really look at his wonderful little face, especially this little drummer who really looks as if he's actually doing a dance and he's just about to strike that drum, you can actually see the expression in his eyes.
I received an email inviting me to an unveiling of Barry Flanagan's work in the British Council offices in the Mall in central London. And I said to the British Council that I was going to Madrid and wanted to film the work of Barry Flanagan there, and they gave me someone to contact. And so I've arrived in Madrid and I contacted the person I was supposed to speak to. They weren't there. I did a quick recce of the location, and bizarrely, they are gone. The pieces are gone. It's like these sculptures that were not there. So I've got to snatch victory somehow from the jaws of defeat. Dane, how are you?
Good, thanks, bud. And yourself?
Good. So we're going off to see the sculpture that isn't there.
Yeah, well, I've been pretty excited that it's not there. It's been a great walk so far, a great day, so beautiful weather. Obviously, I've watched a bit of footage that you've shown me, and everyone seems to be wrapped with things that he's done, and everyone's always talking about what an effect it has on them. I actually really enjoyed the fact that a lot of the work was in the middle of absolutely nowhere. How fantastic was that? Why was it here?
I think part of the justification for the British Council is to promote culture.
Yes, talking about the British, a lot of the British actually seem to be very cold and very in need of emotion, and the art that you showed me today was full of emotion, was humorous and joyful, and I think that maybe that's why it was at the front of the British Council here in Madrid. I've met a couple of British people on my travels, and they were telling me how all their friends are all just, working 9 to 5 and not enjoying themselves, and they'd get home and they wouldn't go out, they wouldn't even see their own country. They'll sit at home and watch movies all night and then go back to work the next day. And I mean, having that type of sculpture, that type of feeling that's coming off something that's a bit irregular, could create such a little bit of difference, a little bit of I don't know, as humour.
And here's to Barry Flanagan, yeah?
Yes, go Baz. You're a good bloke.
Is that an apple balancing on his foot?
I think he's one of the greatest artists we've ever had.
Oh.
And 1, 2, 3, go.
I took him once to the WAG Club, and he started dancing. He was sort of dancing in a sort of chicken sort of dance sort of way. And Chris Sullivan, the owner at the time, said, "That man is great. He can come in here anytime he likes. He doesn't have to be a member." I first met him when I had my gallery in the King's Road, and it was like one Sunday, and I was painting it up, and Barry came by, I think with Luciana Martinez.
When would this be?
About 1983. And he came in. I think he even actually helped paint the walls. He was he was like really kind of dedicated in that way to kind of help, art being promoted. And he loved all sorts of different works of art. I mean, I remember he told me he bought a Picasso. And I said to Barry one day, I said, "Listen, why don't you, you should have a museum." And he said, "Well, what should I call it?" I said, "You should call it the Barry Flanagan Museum." About 1990, Barry said he would love to have a show in Moscow. And we thought it'd be a fantastic idea because it was still the Soviet Union. And, these huge, great sort of statues, Stalin statues of soldiers, etc. And what would have been wonderful is to have Barry's hairs next door to these soldiers. And this is what we conceived to do. About 1990, this man called Misha Mihaev, who was head of the arts promotion department of the Artists Union of the USSR, came to London. And I introduced him to Barry. Barry said, "Fantastic." Barry said, "Listen, I'll tell you what, I'll get my car out of the garage and I'll pick you up." And Misha was with his wife, Olga. And I think we were in Soho, and Barry arrived in his Rolls Royce. But the Rolls Royce, the passenger side, had been sort of dented, so they couldn't get in the passenger side. They had to get in for the driver's side, which didn't really impress the Russians. I mean, if it was a Vauxhall, brand new Vauxhall Vector, they would be more impressed than a Rolls Royce that was dented at the side. So anyway, Barry took them off to see his studio, and they thought, great, let's do this show. But again, in those days, there wasn't the sponsorship as there is now for art, and sadly, it never happened.
What happens in your mind when you look at this work?
Well, I see the two different types of animals. Not animals, but it's like amorphous animals that are just waiting for something and just watching. I like them because they're like nothing, but there's something at the same time.
Carrara marble? Forse the marble di Carrara?
Marmo di Carrara è il bianco, proprio il bianco di Carrara, quello che ha usato Michelangelo per fare le sue opere.
Conosci questo artista, Barry Flanagan?
Sì.
Sì?
Sì, sì.
Oh, ma certo. Grazie, signor.
Prego.
Do you find any humor in this work?
Maybe maternity, emotion. It's very different than I know before.
It's a delight to see it, and I look forward to showing Barry this particular part of the ever-increasing journey.
when I heard that he'd just died, I was at an opening in Paris. I'm now living in Paris. And a woman came up to me and she said, "Didn't I meet you with Barry Flanagan? Do I know you through Barry Flanagan?" Completely out of the blue. And I told her that Barry had died. I mean, I'd heard the news that day. So it was a strange kind of direct connection. And then I realized that the bedroom I was staying in Paris, that I'm living in, actually backs on to his gallery. So he's still a living presence. It's as though his there's theory of the Big Bang with the vibration that stays with us. His vibration is still very much here in the world, and you can feel the Flanagan vibration, perhaps standing by one of his works. Maybe all of his works are a kind of network of places, sounding stones, where you can feel his spirit or the reverberation of his Big Bang, or the Big Bang of his vanishing.
If I ever look back at my own life, it's always saying, truly, I wasn't kind enough. I never look back and say, oh, I was too kind to this person or that person. I always say, I was not kind enough. I look back mostly and say, I should have been kinder, should have been kinder. But I don't think he left such a mistake.
He did so many things for me. So many things. He would turn up at the most unexpected places at shows. Just before he got ill, in fact, I had a show in Marseille. And he drove right through the night. I think there was some problem with a plane or something, for 24 hours just to arrive at Marseille for the opening. And he would do that and never say a word. He'd never ask for thanks or compliments or anything, and then just quietly leave. But you must have found that with so many people. Countless acts of kindness. In a very small way that he never mentioned, never breathed a word of those to anybody else. When I met him first, I was just doing installation work at that time. And he would sometimes say to me, you should start doing bronze. And I would say, well, I'm not ready for that. He had a van at the time. He took me out to his studio, and he had a pot and the wax and all the materials there and the tools. And he gave me everything that he had, his own tools and his own pot, his wax. And brought him back to my studio and said, there you have it all now. Just on you go, get on with it. You have no excuse. You should start. And that's the reason I started doing bronze.
A question I haven't asked anyone.
Yeah?
Is, did you ever have a conversation with Barry about the hair?
Yes.
October 27th, 1969, for Barry Flanagan. There are some lights, and we will name them thus. 1, the flax and the wood. 2, the wood and the flaxen arrow of. Your hair is shorter this afternoon, a pale grey light at the back of your head, and recently snipped a few tiny hairs, little creases in the arms of your jacket, and in the top of the flax, the one suspended, curving fold. A neat dark shirt, no fuss, perspicuous gaze, walking out on a rainy pavement in Berne. The rope demolishes its own presence. The rods, the tilting perspective of the wall, the white, slightly scuffed where it joins the floor, the ominous corner, the panache of flax in air, polish, 3 long sticks. Will the points? Right, not even paint, to a depth of 3 inches.
Oh
So that's it.
So this is the piece that wasn't in Madrid.
Yeah, it's good to actually finally see it. Finally actually hear you talk about it, and now that we've travelled and met up here again, good to actually see what you were talking about. Interesting sculptures.
And of course the artist has passed away in the meantime.
Yeah, it's very sad. Yeah, when you got in touch with me, yeah, it was sort of pretty sad that, yeah, had to tell me the news, but I mean, I wouldn't have even known of the gentleman if it wasn't for you, Peter, so.
And you saw a piece of his work somewhere else in London, thinking that it may be the piece that was supposed to be in Madrid?
Yes, I saw the piece up near Liverpool Street Station, I think it's near. I think it's called Hair Over Crescent and Barrel, is that the one? Yep. And I just happened to find that actually a couple of days after you told me that Barry had passed away, so I actually did sort of stand and admire the statue for a little bit, knowing of who it was.
Does it mean more? I think its meaning becomes perhaps more realised in a strange way.